And for once, it's a beautiful day. It's still cold outside, 12 degrees Celsius, but in here, the new hothouse, it feels absolutely glorious. It's currently 21 degrees. I've lost a little piece of my gimbal, which means I might be wiggling about a little more than I usually wiggle about. So this is all about must-have houseplant kit. Equipment, tech, call it what you will. These are the things that I've added to my hothouse in order to upgrade it and improve things. And you can see I've got the RO water over there next to the house. That's filling up currently. I'm hoping that you're going to be able to see this because I've had to switch all the lights off. Now the reason for that is that fluorescent lighting does tend to strobe when it's being shown on a video and filmed. So I'm hoping that it's either bright enough as it is or I can actually brighten it up with software. So what we're going to talk about today is the kit that I've added in order to improve my growing in this hothouse. So if you've seen my video on how I've moved all my warm growing plants over to this new building. So this is going to be known as the hothouse, and it is really where all my house plants are going to grow. These are the plants that for the most part really do better at the warmer temperatures. Okay, so we'll split it up into the varying factors that house plants need and we'll work through them, and I'll tell you what I've done in order to meet those requirements. Some of these things I was able to do in the greenhouse, but I'm able to do them even better here in the hothouse because it's better insulated. It's just a more suitable environment for it. So we're going to start off with temperature. So if you're new to growing houseplants and new to growing warm growing plants, then this video might be useful to you because I'm going to go through all the various things. And I've already been through this previously with the greenhouse, of course, but of course it's a slightly different situation. So what I'm hoping is that even if you don't have the exact same situation as me, you can look at the various ways that I've tried to solve each problem and it'll help you in some way. So depending on where you live and what your building is, even down to small details like which side of the street you live on, it all makes a difference and will affect what you actually do in order to set things up. But of course the disclaimer is that it might be different to mine. It's likely to be different to mine, so your needs will be slightly different to mine. So first of all, temperature is key for warm growing plants. Of course it is. This is nothing unusual. In the greenhouse, I was managing to keep it at about 15-16 degrees Celsius. Really, that isn't ideal for these kind of plants. And I was noticing that plants like this Begonia, F. Masai nigricans was beginning to lose the leaves, and you can see all these yellowing leaves, and well, they're not really yellowing, are they? They're kind of fading in colour. That's what they should be like. And as soon as the temperature was raised up again, just by 2 degrees, it began to grow again. And the same is true for a lot of the begonias in here. This one has begun to give me some new leaves. This is the green gecko, Begonia Connie Boswell. It's the first time that this has produced new leaves again, simply because the temperatures have gone up by 2 degrees. So because of the insulation in here, I am now able to keep this at 18 degrees Celsius, and I'm doing that by running this very simple, fairly cheap 2 kilowatt heater. This is a heater that you can get off eBay, off Amazon, very cheaply, as I said, about £45. And in actual fact, there are loads and loads like this from different sellers, but they all seem to be the same. They look the same, might be different colours, but they look exactly the same, so you'll recognise it. I did notice, however, that the reviews were really poor. And when I went on to the reviews, now bear in mind I've had one of these, there's another one in the greenhouse, and I've had these now for well over, I'd say the current greenhouse 3 years, but I had one previous to that for probably about 10 years. The reviews that I looked at were all saying the same thing, and I'm guessing that these people were fairly new to heating a plant space. So what they were doing is they were buying this thing and they were thinking that that was going to do the whole thing. That was going to actually detect the temperature, switch on, switch off again, depending on the temperature. In other words, it had a built-in thermostat. Now that might be the case, and it does actually supposedly have one, and you can see it there. That's the thermostat there. Now I've got mine turned right up to to the maximum so that it's on all the time, and I've got the heating set to the full 2 kilowatts. Okay, so bearing in mind that that is set as it is, what you then need is a controller. So you really just use the heater as full on, everything on all the time, and it's the controller which actually detects the temperature, because these controllers are way more sensitive and way more accurate, and you can pinpoint it down to a specific actual degree, even as much as a 1/10 of a degree. So I've got mine set at the moment at 17 degrees Celsius, and what happens is the heater is plugged into that, and that will switch on as soon as the temperature drops below 17 degrees Celsius, and of course it will switch off again as soon as the temperature reaches 17 degrees Celsius. Now at the moment it's at 20.8 degrees Celsius, so it's fine, there's no heater coming on. And I have noticed that obviously I've not got glass in here quite as much as in the greenhouse, so all these walls, because they are wooden and they're actually insulated wooden, they're quite thick, there's insulation behind there, same with the ceiling, the fan heater isn't kicking on nowhere near as much as it was in the greenhouse, so that's a plus point for moving everything over to this building. So that's the temperature sorted out. That keeps it at a minimum temperature. What do we do about maximum temperatures? Well, of course, in here it's going to get, or likely to get, too hot in summer. We have lots of windows. We have a side window there, we have the full front of the windows, and we have another window over here. We also have windows over on the back here as well. So we do have some lighting coming in, but when the sun reaches the front, of course, it's going to heat up very quickly. Probably not as quickly as the greenhouse does. Two reasons for that. One, the positioning in the garden, but secondly, because it's really not in the sun for very long. It's probably only in the midsummer in the sunshine for a few hours a day, 3 or 4 hours a day. Having said that, I still expect the heat to go too high, and obviously there's a problem because we've got plants right in the window there and they will burn. So what I will do, I've got two options. I will put some 85% shade cloth on the outside. I'll just hang some hooks. I've got some hooks over here that I've bought specifically for that purpose, and I'll be able to put the 85% shade cloth up. And if things get really bad, I do have some built-in blinds here, which are pretty much blackout blinds. You know, they're not going to let much light through, which will bring me to the lighting in a moment. So I'm hoping, you know, nothing is actually better than experience, but I haven't experienced it yet. We'll see what happens when it comes round to summer. I know it does get hot in here at certain times of the day, and I'm going to have to deal with that. I will need to monitor it. Now I have something called a Technoline system, and the Technoline system, it consists of like a little sensor. I think they're about £23, and that will connect to an app. Now I currently have two running off an app, and I've bought another one, and it will come in here when it arrives. And what that will do is it will tell me what the temperature is at any point, and it will beam it across the airwaves to me. So it does work on Wi-Fi, but it also works on mobile data as well, so I'll know wherever I am. Now obviously if I'm miles away I can't do much about it. The whole point of it is that because I'm not going in here every single day of the week, you know, let's say the temperature drops suddenly. Let's say there's a problem with the heater, the temperature drops suddenly, and then I have to come in here and do something with the plants, or do something with the heater, or replace it and so on. If I didn't know about it and it was over a prolonged period of time, say a full day, 24 hours, then it's likely that I would get damage to these plants, you know, if the temperatures are really cold outside. So that's the whole point of it. It's not absolutely infallible. If all the electricity goes off, I'm not going to get any notification on my phone. I won't know, other than if I'm in the house and the electricity goes off in there as well. If it just goes off to this building, then I'm not going to know about it if it's not able to send me a signal. So no, it's not infallible. And the same thing goes for the heater really. If the electricity goes off and I really am stuck, I do have a gas heater, but it's not absolutely ideal. It's really meant to be used outside instead of inside. So I don't know what I'll do. I'll face that when I come to it. That's just one of those things. You cannot plan for every single eventuality, unfortunately. I wish I could, but I can't. Isn't that looking great? That's the Laelia anceps, does really well for me, species orchid. I've been told very recently from Patricia at Patricia's Orchids that I can actually grow that cold. So I will do that, and the reason for that is she says that it will actually not produce such a long spike. The spike will be considerably shorter, and that's what I'm going to do, because at the moment mine is kind of stretching back there and round there. It's about 1.5 meters and it's just too long. I don't really know what to do with it. So anyway, that's the temperature sorted out, so let's move on to the next factor. Okay, so talking about light, I have to say that these plants are growing absolutely, incredibly strongly at the moment. I'm really, really pleased. It's been a few days since I last came in here and things are noticeably different. And I'm wondering is this something to do with the light? In the greenhouse, I have grow light, but because you've got glass, the light tends to go out of the window. It doesn't bounce back in. Now, I have bought 2 grow lights up here. They're unbranded, and they are up in the roof there, and they weren't expensive. In fact, you could say in grow light terms they were very, very cheap. I think they were £35 each, something like that. My take on grow lights is this: if you have branded grow lights, so I'm talking about the ones that are well-known brands in the grow light space, people like Spider Farmer, Mars Hydro, Migro, I think is another one. I can't remember them all. There's a number of brands that people will recognise as grow light brands. If you buy from them, then the situation is as follows, as far as I can see, and in my opinion. The more expensive a grow light you buy, the more efficient it will be, the better quality it will be, the more optimal growth you will get from your plants, the more wavelengths your plants will get, etc, etc. Okay, so the more you spend, the better. However, any supplementary lighting is better than nothing. Anything. So even if you get a cheap LED strip light or a fluorescent light, that is better than not providing any light at all. Those wavelengths all help your plant. Is it optimal? No. Is it better than what you had before? Yes. So in that case, it's all about your budget, isn't it? If you can really afford to spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds on grow light, then go for it. I'm sure your plants will benefit more if that's the case. However, if you're like me and you've got a particular budget in mind and you don't want to spend too much, then by all means go for the cheaper lighting. They will help your plants to grow better than if you hadn't done that at all. So in here I had the strip light that came with the building, so I had that on all day. I've switched it off now for obvious reasons. It does tend to strobe when you're filming. And the same with the 2 grow lights that I've bought. The difference in lighting is really quite phenomenal. You can see it from the house quite easily. And the fact that I've not got all these windows, I've got some white painted walls. I've painted those white to reflect the light back in. It really does bounce that light back in, unlike in the greenhouse. So I think it's actually brighter in here, even though these grow lights are a lot cheaper, a lot less expensive than the ones I've got in the greenhouse, which were also actually what would be classed as budget option lights, but not like super budget like these ones are. They're still in the kind of professional grow light space. On the budget end. These, if you were a professional grower, wouldn't even be worth your time. But for people like me, it's better than nothing. So I hopefully think I've solved the lighting problem. And of course, if I have shading up during the summer, then I've got the grow lights to fall back on. So yeah, by all means, if you are growing house plants, wherever you're growing them, consider getting some lighting. It will really change the growth of your plants. It will change your life in terms of plant growing, I think. So the next factor in plant growth, house plant growth, warm growing plant growth, is humidity and ventilation. Now, people get all worked up over humidity. I did a whole video on this, which I will link to at some point, either in a card or at the end of the video. And my take on humidity is that the vast majority of plants are quite happy with humidity above about 35%, up to about 90%. The majority. There are exceptions, of course. And if you live in the UK, humidity between those figures isn't really a major concern. I know because I measure it. The humidity in my greenhouse is practically always above 70%. It's very rarely below that. And I mean, like during the winter months, it's never below that. Just occasionally, and I'm talking about every 2 to 3 years, we might get some easterly weather fronts when the humidity really drops. And even then, it's only for about a week. So what we're talking about here is some plants might be at risk of suffering if they are either below 35% humidity or above 90% humidity for a prolonged period of time. In my experience in the UK, in the position that I am in, that never happens. And if it did, I would know about it because I measure it. Now, if you're growing in the house, you'll probably say to me, as I've said in the past, when you've got the central heating on, the radiators on, the humidity drops dangerously low. Well, have you tested it? I have, and no, it doesn't. It very, very closely corresponds with the humidity outside. I've tested it. I'm still testing it. I have humidity meters all over the house. And even with the radiators on, the humidity stays pretty close to what's going on outside. You know, we're talking about, I haven't yet seen humidity below 50% in the house, despite the radiators being on all through winter. So for me, in this space where I am now, humidity isn't an issue. If it is for you, then don't just make assumptions, test it so you know for sure. So let's say, for example, that we do get one of those weather fronts from the east and the humidity drops. I will know about it because it will be there for me on my humidity meters in the greenhouse. I'll know all about it. So I've got a couple of options. To get the majority of the options, have a look at that video because I've gone through various things that you can do. But for me, I have a hydrofogger in there that I can switch on. There's all sorts of other things that I can do to offset that lower humidity for that period of time. Ventilation, okay, couple of things. We've got 2 windows at the back which open up. So that will allow some air to come in. At the moment, there's no air coming in here. There's not much ventilation at all because it's so cold outside. But in the summer, I can open them up. And then over here, we've got a big window there that I can open up. I've got double doors here that can open up. And I think that's it. That window did used to open, but it doesn't anymore. So that's ventilation sorted out. Air movement, again, in my experience and from what I've read, warm growing plants benefit from air movement a lot more than people give them credit for. I don't think it's something that people tend to think about much. Beautiful flowers on my begonia there, Begonia luxurians, just thought I'd show you that. It has actually got a number of blooms on it, popping up all over the place, and this is the second time it's bloomed for me since I bought it about a year ago. So yeah, back to air movement. So what do we need to give air movement? We need fans. So I have a black fan over there, but it's not enough. It's okay if you're in the line of it, but it's not really providing enough air movement for these plants over here. So that's something I've still to work on. I'm going to have to either get another one of those or get a larger, more powerful one when I can figure out where to put it. So I don't know what it is about air movement that plants seem to like, but just think about what happens in nature. You know, it's very rare that a plant is in a position where it's not getting air movement constantly. So, you know, that tells you, doesn't it? The fact that that's happening in the wild, it's happening naturally, it's likely that they're going to want it to happen in an artificial environment like this. I expect it's something to do with the strength of the plant. The more air movement a plant has to suffer, then the stronger its stems and its leaves are going to be, and you're not going to get a lot of kind of floppy growth. So don't discount air movement, especially when you're in a house. I really think that is a factor that people don't think about. Kohleria, I think sunshine, just beginning to come out now. I always love it when that comes out. It's got a much better show for me yet. You know, don't just think that that's all it's going to be. It will be smothered in blooms. I did cut that right back down. I had a big plant of that last year. It'll probably bloom twice for me this year. This time it'll be covered, but the next time it'll be twice that height, if not 3 times that height, and covered again. So definitely worth purchasing. I bought some more Kohleria actually this year, which I'll show you at some point. So my next factor to talk about is watering. I'll try and keep that brief. So now that I've got wooden floors, I've got to be a little bit more careful about watering. So a couple of things. I've got a trug there so that if I'm filling my watering can or my sprayer, I can do it over there so it catches any runoff. All the plants are in gravel trays, so anything that's watered in situ, the water will go through. Obviously, I can't let it fill up with water unless it's something like one of these Nepenthes, because I don't want it to sit in water for too long. And by the way, that looks like it's getting spider mite again. It happens like that, it goes that colour when it gets spider mite. Again, through experience, I'm going to have to give that a spray. I'm now using a sprayer, so that sprayer is filled from the main trug where I have orchid feed and so on. I'm using that to water the orchids because I've discovered, or I think, that most of the new roots tend to be around the surface of the orchid. So I'm going to spray the top of the orchids rather than dunk, rather than pour through, which I probably will do every so often. Like as a general maintenance thing, I'm going to spray into the top of the orchid pots and try and do it that way. Try and do it a little bit more regular, and hopefully all those roots that are kind of around the surface will get what they need, so that I don't get this strange situation where I'm watering them and they still look like they're dehydrating. I keep trying things, I keep failing, but I keep trying again. Okay, as far as space goes, so you can see that things are all off the floor now, and I've bought these, and I know a lot of you growers have these things, these kind of modular plastic and metal shelving, and these are really versatile. So I think I bought about 6, so you could get a couple of like about 1 meter high shelves for about £25. I would definitely say check the price on these because they are wildly different in prices across eBay. So get yourself a few of those, and what I've done here is I have split them and then put them together again at the height that I wanted. So we've got this one, or these 2 here, that go up to about, I don't know, whatever that is, about 5 feet in height. And I've took some of these shelf racks off so that I can have some taller plants in between there. And I've put them up on the walls, so now we have some space for hanging things. I was intending to put shelving on there, wooden shelving, but you know, as usual, your plans don't always match up to reality. So now I think that's a better use of that space. I can put more of my mounts up there, and I've done exactly the same thing over on this side. I've used the spur racks in order to make some mounted space. So I've got these 2 shelves at the back here with all the plants on. Again, these are roughly about 5 feet high, and then I've managed to use the rest of them. Again, another one about 5 feet high, and then an extra one at the bottom there. And you can see again another beautiful, that's my Begonia listada, which is just filling the entire shelf. Really nice plant. And then over here, the one at the front here, this one is roughly about 6 feet high. Okay, again, done exactly the same thing. I've left some of the shelves out so I can put some of the taller plants in. There's not a lot on that yet, but you know, things will grow, and no doubt I will add to the collection. One thing I would say about buying these things is that don't think you can mix and match them all. If you're going to get them all from the same seller. Make sure you get the same brand, because there are loads of copies, and I had 2 from one particular seller and then some others from another seller, and I don't know if you can spot there, but they're slightly different colour, that one and those 2 over there. They're not compatible with each other, so I had to be a little bit canny with the way I put them together. So if you are going to do that, make sure you get them from the same seller and you know they're all going to be compatible and the same. Now, in terms of plant maintenance, I can use my snippers. I've got a bin down there. It's important to make space for a bin, so I can go round at any time that I come in here and I can prune things and I can snip snip things off. As far as actual repotting goes, or anything a little bit more complex, that's going to be done in the main greenhouse. I'm not going to do that in there because I really wanted to make as much use of space as I possibly could. I've repurposed some of the office furniture that was in here initially, that's what that's for, and I notice now I actually have a little fungus gnat problem. I don't know if you can see all these fungus gnats everywhere, they're all over the place, and that's just since I brought these plants in here. So what I'm going to have to do is, I have a pinguicula over in the greenhouse, and that will do really well in here, and it will also rid me of a lot of my fungus gnats. So I'll bring that over here for a little while. I might even buy a couple more because they're really handy for that. So that's all my tech at the moment. I think I've been through every growth factor that is relevant. If I haven't, please put it in the comments, and by all means, if there's anything that you want to tell me about your setup that I might benefit from or other people might benefit from, I love to hear from people. Put that in the comments too, and of course a thumbs up wouldn't go amiss. Now the thing is, whether you're new to houseplants or you've been growing them for a while, you're always interested in what you should be growing or what else other people are growing or what you would like to get into next. So if that's the case, go and watch this video which tells you my top 5 houseplants as of when I made it, which was actually February, not that long ago. And you'll also see Rachel's favourites from Gardening at Duensa as well. I'll link to that at the end. And for now, I'll see you on the next one. Bye!